Hi, did you wonder why your tongue tie release wasn't as effective as you thought it would be? That your baby didn't automatically change their sucking patterns once you got that release? My name is Joan Comrie. This is part 2 of why did that tongue tie not release as well as I wanted it to release. Dr. Gilhari is a physician that does a lot of tongue tie releases, and he's very well known. And he talks about how parents come in thinking the tongue tie release is a one and done, that the baby's going to get the release and it's automatically going to change their sucking patterns. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case for most babies. Now, sometimes the newborns, 1 to 2 weeks after they're born, sometimes when they get that tongue released, their tongue automatically changes and becomes more effective. But if you think about it, babies start sucking at 16 weeks gestation. So at 16 weeks gestation, a baby with a tongue restriction because they have a tongue tie is going to start using compensatory patterns, or they don't use that tongue correctly when they're swallowing, and they're practicing swallowing until the baby is born at about 40 weeks gestation. Hopefully that's when they're born. And that is a long period of time to be using incorrect or ineffective or restricted tongue movements. So when you go get that tongue released, the baby's not going to automatically start using their tongue correctly because they've been working with incorrect patterns and restrictions for a very, very long time. And so what happens is sometimes the baby doesn't even know that they have that range of motion because the tongue tie release gives you passive range of motion, which means your physician or I, as a feeding therapist, can go in, lift your baby's tongue up to the roof of their mouth. But that doesn't mean that they know that they have that range of motion and that they can use that range of motion, because it only provides the passive range of motion. And what the baby needs to learn is the active range of motion, which is what feeding therapy can do. Your therapist can teach you how to help teach your baby to activate that tongue during feeding so that they have more effective feeding skills. The other thing that can happen is that the baby has reduced strength. So they can maybe start to use that new range of motion, but they don't have the strength to maintain that. They also may not have the endurance to maintain that. So if they don't have the strength or the endurance, you may start hearing things like tongue clicking, where the baby is attempting to get that lingual undulation or that movement of the tongue, which is the most effective for your sucking patterns. They may attempt that, but they don't have the strength or they don't have the endurance, and they kind of drop out, and then they go back to the old patterns, which is why a lot of moms will report in the physician's office where they had the release completed, the baby nursed beautifully, and then when they came home after a few nursing sessions or even after a few days, the baby goes back to the old patterns. And that's because they don't have the strength or the endurance to maintain new patterns, so they go back to the old patterns because that's what's most comfortable and easiest for them. So if you get, or you're considering, or you've already had a tongue tie release and things aren't going the way that you want it to, or you want to make sure that it goes the way that you want it to, get feeding therapy, because that will be very, very helpful to activate your baby's tongue patterns. So once that release is there, they can use that, that range of motion that they have. Thank you for listening to this video. If you found it helpful, please feel free to like it. Please subscribe, send it to your friends, and hopefully you just have a great day. Thank you.